Alrighty. Hi, everyone. We are back for the next lecture on this sociobiological section. So in this video, we'll be talking about sociobiological explanations for certain social behaviors like aggression or altruism, and we'll also go over some psychological modules, such as cheating, fear, things like that. So let's start with that social aspect. So aggression. Research shows that men often aggress for various reasons. Main reason for that is to achieve status, achieve social status. And so what we see from this is that men will typically engage in more physical aggression than women. Often, again, to try and gain this status and threat to that status. However, that threat wherever that threat may come from, probably from, another person, another male, something like that, commonly leads to fights and even murders. Another reason why men will often aggress more than women is because of sexual jealousy. And so men are, based on this, again, sociobiological theory, men are going to be less certain of their paternity, whereas women, obviously, if they're pregnant, going to be certain that they will be passing on their genes with this kid, versus the male in that scenario maybe isn't positive or isn't as sure. And this lack of certainty leads to that sexual jealousy, which again can then lead to aggression. Kind of coming back to the certainty topic, where if you remember, we talked about this in the very first lecture, and just mentioned that we want to have certainty over our environment so that we can control it. And that control and certainty leads to more positive feelings. And when we don't feel that control or certainty, we feel threat, or in this case, sexual jealousy. There is research, however, and it's talked about in your book, that when it comes to infidelity, which is obviously a source of jealousy, that women are more focused on emotional infidelity, whereas men are more focused on sexual infidelity. There also, it makes sense based on the sociobiological theory that humans are less likely to harm their own offspring than stepchildren. This gets at that fitness idea that we're trying to keep our genes going through the next generations. And a nice, cheery, uplifting topic here is infanticide by the natural parent. One of the few cases where humans are shown to harm their own children. This is the most common from 0 to 12 months, and it tends to be the mother who is involved. Based on the sociobiological theory, it's more likely to be the mother because, again, as we talked about in the last video, the mother is required to provide more resources to that child. And so if certain threatening or stressful situations happen, like let's say maybe there's a famine or the child is unhealthy, and there's a good chance that child will die, right? That's a lot of resources for the mother to put in that could be placed elsewhere, such as in other children that have a better likelihood of surviving, or in terms of trying to wait to a better time period where all children are more likely to survive, things like that. And so from a sociobiological standpoint, this is almost painful to say, but from this standpoint, it's would be almost a rational thing to do in terms of putting in more resources to the children who are more likely to survive. One more thing about that though, whoops, sorry about that. Obviously there are other explanations for this, not just the sociobiological one, but it is a main theory that explains this, but also there could be other explanations like postpartum depression. So from one uplifting topic to the next, let's say in this hypothetical scenario that your house is on fire and you can only save one person, either your grandma or your nephew. Who would you save? Give you a few seconds to think about it here. All right, so most say the nephew, and this gets at that inclusive fitness. So this is an interesting scenario because biologically, your grandma and nephew will typically share the same or similar amount of genetic makeup to you. And so the idea behind this decision is that the nephew still will be more likely to end up passing on those genes, and therefore, for inclusive fitness reasons, you would choose to save the nephew. So that was kind of an introduction to some extent of pro-social behavior, but getting at altruism. So a main form of altruism is kinship selection. And so basically, from the standpoint, we are more likely to help relatives that are close to us, especially the young, healthy ones, or nephews as opposed to grandmas or whatever. And the idea behind this is that by helping your relatives, you're also helping the continuation of passing on those genes. Interestingly, we also help people who are not related to us. Why we might do that is reciprocal helping. So there's kind of a social norm and an expectation that when we help other people, we expect them to help us as well. And there's actually still to this day a pretty big debate more in the moral psychology realm about whether or not true altruism is actually a thing. And so one side argues yes, that can happen. The other side argues that no, true altruism isn't real. Every time we're doing some sort of social behavior, we expect to get something in return. Additionally, another way of helping people not related to us is cooperative groups. So like building a house or whatever it might be. This cannot be done well, or can be done a lot more easily in groups with more people. And so that's a way of forming, or a reason to form those cooperative groups, is to make things easier for everyone. Now, moving from evolved social behaviors to evolved psychological modules or mechanisms. Sorry, I don't know if you can, it says modules. Basically what these are, they're hardwired behaviors. In other words, there are parts of the brain that are devoted to these certain behaviors, and these behaviors then solve a particular problem that is vital for survival or reproduction. And this involves just taking a class of information, transforming it, and then acting upon it. Some key examples of this would be planning. This was briefly brought up when talking about the hunter-gatherers and the movement to agriculture. That's one thing that humans are very good at, is planning, and we actually have a large portion of the frontal part of the brain that we'll talk about more in the future in this class that is devoted to planning. And we also see that humans especially have fairly large parts of the brain devoted to language, and obviously relative to other animals, we're very good with language, and this has helped us with both survival and reproduction. There we go. So let's get into, I'm going to talk about two just tasks here. So the first one Watson card task. Take a glance at these four, we'll call them cards here. And let's say that there's a rule that if there is a vowel on one side, so like the E, then there should be an even number on the flip side of that card. So if you were going to test this hypothesis or this rule, which cards should be flipped over? Again, I'll give you a few seconds to think about this. All right, if you need more time, please just pause the video, but I'll keep it moving. So a lot of people will say E. This seems like in this task, probably the most obvious answer. But then the second card to flip over is a bit trickier. So a lot of people will say either 4 or K. But really what you would want to do here is flip over that 7, because it wouldn't really make sense to flip over the K because there's no rule for consonants, and it wouldn't really make sense to flip over the 4 because if you find a vowel there, it's not showing you anything new that flipping over the E didn't show you. And if there's a consonant with the 4, that's okay too, because there's no rule against that. So you would want to flip over that 7 and see if that is a vowel there that would disprove the rule. Now for the second task, so more of a social contract task, let's say you are working for the police, only those with a license are allowed to drive. Who do you check? Again, probably going to pick 2 answers here. If you want more time to think about this, please pause, but I'll keep it rolling here. See, so you would want to pick those who are driving and those without a license. I think that this task here is typically easier for people. There are more correct answers with this task than the previous task, in terms of you want to just choose those drivers or the people who are driving to see if they do have licenses, and you want to check with those without a license to see if they're driving. Again, similar to that last task, finding a way to try and prove that hypothesis and then picking another option to try and disprove that hypothesis. But why was this task likely easier than the previous task? And this gets at cheating modules. So cheating modules or social contracts help us understand and answer these questions. I think that when trying to figure out why the second task was easier, one possible explanation would be familiarity, because you had already done a similar task with the Watson task first. So then doing it again might help. And there is evidence for that, the familiarity does help, but social contracts and cheating modules specifically seem to really help clear up answers in these scenarios. So we as humans are very good at noticing cheating. Sorry, the buttons are being weird on me here, but yeah, we're good at noticing cheating, and based on the sociobiological theory, we have biologically evolved to form, this cheating has evolved to be a form of information that we're good at processing, because it is important for us for survival to know who is cooperating with us and who is not. And this can be seen easily in the hunter-gatherers and the development of agriculture scenarios. If you're doing the agriculture by yourself and others are cheating out of the work they're supposed to do, it's going to take a lot more effort from you. Or with the hunter-gatherers, if you and people that you hope will cooperate with you are going to help out with that hunting, and you're going to go try and hunt that giant armadillo or whatever it may be, and you count down from 3, 3, 2, 1, all right, let's go get it, and you're the only one who goes and tries to get this thing, you might die. So we have evolved to be good at deciding whether or not those around us are cooperating or whether they're cheating. So last slide here. Seems though we also have, as humans, a fear module or mechanism. And so the question is fear directly innate or is it acquired? So are we afraid of things like spiders or snakes or whatever it might be from birth? Or is that more of a learned fear? Interestingly, kids are typically taught what to be afraid of, like don't touch the stove, don't go grab that snake, don't run across the street, or look both ways before you go across the street. So oftentimes, or pretty much always, kids have to be taught these things, but the thing is that we learn very fast. And so the idea is that, well, fear of specific things like spiders or whatever is not directly innate. We are or do seem to be born and have evolved to be born with a preparedness to experience fear. So we don't have to spend as much time learning what to be afraid of as we have to for other things like, math or whatever it might be. And that provides direct evidence of having some sort of a fear module or a mechanism. And also spend a little bit of time later on in this course talking about what aspect of the brain might be involved with this fear module as well as other emotions. So I'll stop it here, and we'll get to the last part of this sociobiological section in the next video.